Hi, everyone. My name is Marina. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the panel program manager at GeekGirlCon and also a huge BL manga fan. So today I'm going to kind of give you a BL manga 101 lecture, letting you know kind of information about the genre, the history, and where everything is going. So stay tuned. Just a quick content warning before I get started. This lecture does contain discussions of sexual assault and rape. So if that is something that you're sensitive to, feel free to sit this out. And I will kind of try and give a heads up if I'm going to. All right. So before we get into kind of the genre and the information behind it, uh, there is some terminology that's helpful to know up front when discussing. So BL stands for boys love, and there are a lot of different terms for the genre that have been used kind of throughout the history of its existence. So some common ones are yaoi, BL, boys love, shonen ai, 801, june, and homo. So the term yaoi comes from the phrase yamanashi, ochinashi, iminashi, meaning no climax, no resolution, no meaning. There is conflicting stories about the origin of this term, but it's commonly accepted that it was originally coined by doujinshi, which are fan comic creators in the late 80s as a self-derogatory term. Doujinshi depicted the male characters engaging in sex at the expense of any plot. So they were kind of poking fun at themselves with this term, and it caught on. And for a long time, it was used as kind of the default term for this genre. Western audiences, especially, commonly use yaoi to refer to all Japanese homoerotic manga and anime. BL is now the term that's widely used internationally to describe any male male relationship media. BL as a term includes manga, anime, games, dramas, and books. And Western audiences usually use this to refer to any non Western queer media. So Thai BL, Chinese BL. And I've also seen non Western audiences refer to media like Love Simon as American BL or Heartstopper as British BL. So it's kind of funny how different people in different countries have taken the term. Okay, so origins of the genre. Uh, in the 1970s, the Year 24 group took over producing shoujo manga from male artists. And shoujo manga is manga that is made for women or for girls and kind of stories that target that audience specifically. So these women took over producing shoujo manga, and this group revolutionized the manga business by publishing manga by women for women. These artists were all born after the war, and previously, uh, girls' manga featured female leads, but due to societal roles, expression was kind of limited. And their stories were strongly based on the tanbi or the aesthetic genre. Um, the these stories that they published focused on characters that were men, which allowed authors to depict more independent characters in erotic contexts. So as women took over, they wanted to expand what kinds of stories women were reading, women were allowed to read, and using male characters allowed them to go deeper into the stories they wanted to tell without kind of pushing up against any societal limitations or kind of cultural taboos. So the artists in this year have a canonical status kind of in this genre. And regarding Tanbi, this was a genre, or this was kind of an aesthetic that was inspired by aestheticism in England. And the trend of Tanbi was popular in the Japanese literary field in the late 19th century. And literally, tanbi can be translated as into the status of being obsessed with aesthetics. The important creators that were in this group include Hagio Moto, Ikeda Ryoko, and Takemiya Keiko. And this group established tropes that are popular in the genre until the 1990s. So the work that they were doing during this time period really kind of cemented a lot of genre tropes, mainstays, and character dynamics that were present for the next 20 years. So some of the tropes that they established were beautiful men who are popular with women, but chose men as their ultimate love objects, an affluent environment, often among the European upper classes. This kind of ties into that Tanbi aesthetic. And then plots in which the protagonist's impossible and perfect love ends in tragedy. So Kaze Tsukino Uta is commonly uh, is commonly seen as like the big work that came out of this time. People refer to it constantly. It's a classic. It was incredibly influential, and it won a Shogakukan Manga Award, which is a pretty prestigious manga award. And this started the trend of tragedy and yaoi shonen ai that continues to this day in works like Zetsui 1989 and Sakura Gari. It tackles themes of racism, classism, rape, homophobia, and drug abuse. And there was an anime OVA produced in the 80s, which I think is one of the first like BL OVAs. Other important manga that came out during this time are The Heart of Thomas by Moto Hagio, another classic. Um, Mari Toshingo by Kihara Toshie, and From Eureka with Love by Yasuoko Aoki. And that has trans-ish protagonist, and they're all of these books are really good. And there's a question in the chat that I see asking if Yuri has a similar backstory. I am actually not sure about the history of Yuri as much as Yaoi and BL, but there is a really good book that came out this year or is coming out this year that does a deep dive into the genre history of beauty that I'm very interested in reading. Okay, so throughout the lecture, I'm going to give some recommendations for a wide variety of BL manga that you could check out if you're interested in getting into the genre, trying it out. And all of these recommendations are different kind of types of stories within the genre. And I think it's important to think of BL as not having a specific story type, not like a romance trope, but like as a genre, because a lot of different stories can be told within the framework. So my first recommendation is Sakura Gari by Iwatase. And she is a shoujo manga artist. She did the series Fushigi Yugi and Ceres the Celestial Legend, both of which were pretty big in like the 90s, 2000s. And this is probably one of my all-time favorite BL mangas because it is very kind of rich in the historical setting. So the story takes place in Tokyo in 1920 and is about the relationship between Masataki Tagami, a poor student who wishes to enter the Imperial University of Tokyo, and Soma Saiki, a tormented aristocrat with a sulfurous reputation who agrees to take him into his service and house him while Masataka prepares for the entrance exam. So content warning for this series, it contains violence, sexual assault, torture, and abuse. It is a darker series, and it's a contemporary work that embodies the tropes of early BL manga, including the tombi aesthetic, the semi-foreign setting, tragic ending, and a lot of violence. The artwork in this work draws on contemporary Japanese artists like Takato Yamamoto and the Aroguro aesthetic. And the manga is not officially licensed or translated, but it is available online and has been scanlated. So if you just search the manga name, you can find translations. American publishers have said, when asked about translating it, that due to the content, there is an underage assault in the story. They are unable to publish it or kind of uninterested in going into kind of the murky waters that it might bring. And Yuatase is a well-known shoujo manga artist, and this was her first foray into darker subjects. So when she published this work, it was kind of a total 180 from the work she had been previously doing. And she hasn't done anything like it since. I frequently check because I really liked this. Okay, so next we're going to go into the more of the origins of the genre and the publishing side. So publishing is kind of a big part of how BL manga came to be, has flourished, and it's important to understand kind of the way that publishing works in Japan. So June magazine was the first BL magazine, which is important. So in Japan, manga is primarily published in magazines, and these magazines are usually published either weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And further, these magazines are kind of broken down by the audience that they're targeting. So there's shoujo manga, which is for girls. It would have series like Cardcaptor Sakura. Shonen magazines, these are for boys, and would include series like Haikyuu or My Hero Academy. Josei, which is for women kind of 14 to 40. A series that would be a Josei series is like Princess Jellyfish. And a Seinen series targets boys and men ages 14 to 40 and would have series like Beastars or Blue Period. So this is how people consume manga, or traditionally have consumed manga in Japan. These like thick telephone book size magazines are published. People get them, they read them, they recycle them. And it's different from how manga is published in the US, which is in volumes and trade paperbacks. So here, reading manga can kind of be financially difficult because you often spend a lot of money for like a little content. But in Japan, the manga magazines are more affordable. So you're not making such a financial investment. And you're also reading multiple series at a time because they're serialized. And stories can be published and serialized for months, years, basically as long as the author and the publisher want to keep working together. So June magazine was important because this is how people consumed manga. It was a combination of Tombi, Shonen Ai, and explicit content, and these stories published in June furthered the focus on tragedy. They often revolved around the threat of discovery and grappling with queer identity. So Comiket is where BL began to really flourish. And Comiket is a comics festival in Japan. It first began in 1975, and it continues to this day. Female fans of anime and manga would create fan comics revolving around strong male friendships that they would see in the media they were consuming. So essentially, they are publishing fan fiction, illustrated fan fiction. And to this day, many artists continue to get their start as doujinshi artists who were then first published in June. So Comiket is, I think, kind of a good comparison might be to like an artist's alley or a convention like Vancouver Comic Arts Festival, where people bring their comics. Sometimes they're inspired by series they're reading, like Slam Dunk or Prince of Tennis. Other times they're totally original creations that they've made and they're hoping to, share with people. I don't know if people get publishing deals in the same way. I don't think that it works like that. And the people that exhibit at Comiket are frequently also professional artists. So you might have, as your own series and then create doujinshi that you then go and sell at Comic Con. A good example of that is the artist Fumi Yoshinaga, who does the series Antique Bakery and What Did You Eat Yesterday? And she created doujinshi that addressed the will they, won't they relationship between characters in her Antique Bakery series. She couldn't address it in the story because it didn't kind of fit in with the larger story she was telling, but it was clear that she wanted to tell it. So she, made doujinshi and she sold it at Comic Con. Kadoka Kazuma is also another good example. She is a prolific creator. She's kind of in the canon of BL mangaka, and she has created doujinshi for anime, including Yuri on Ice, Prince of Tennis, Haikyuu. She's really into the Omegaverse, which is extremely popular in Japan and has a whole Yuri on Ice Omegaverse series that's highly entertaining. So with kind of the burgeoning of doujinshi and june and more BL magazines kind of coming into their own and becoming popularized, the 90s happened and BL kind of blew up. In the 90s, BL became a commercially successful genre. 9 new magazines were launched, 4 publishers entered the market, and this is when publishers first introduced the term boys love. And this is kind of when BL was popularized to refer to original manga, novels, and anime rather than yaoi, which was kind of used to refer to works based on existing properties. Anime adaptations began to be produced for popular series like Ai no Kusabi and Fake, and these adaptations were not series, but instead original OVAs, original video animations. They're just kind of short movies that usually either tell the whole story, severely truncated, or they tell little sections of the story. So during the 90s, new story tropes began to emerge. Rape as an expression of love, characters maintaining their straight, seme and uke roles, sex always involving intercourse, and then the characters became less androgynous during this period. Pushback came from male mangaka as women were making more and more of these works. And this criticism was seen as an attempt to police female creators and undermine their work. And male creators were kind of doing the same, kind of publishing the same type of work in terms of explicit straight content. And they didn't like that women were starting to get recognition and power for doing this with queer content. And this is also when BL began to kind of start gaining popularity in the West due to unauthorized translations online. So nothing was officially translated early in the 90s. I don't think it was until kind of later in the 90s that we started getting official translations. Other manga that were published during this time that are very popular are Fake, Gravitation, Fujimi Orchestra, Zetsui. And then the Clamp Manga Collective, which you might know from Cardcaptor Sakura, X1999, Tsubasa, XXX Holic. They got their start as a kind of publishing group that had made doujin with strong BL undertones, and the work that they produced after all these series also has kind of really strong BL undertones. So there is, so someone asked a question about the seme uke roles. So seme and uke are essentially top and bottom, and these roles in manga are very defined by the character's aesthetics. So, the larger, more aggressive character is the top. the more feminine, submissive character is the bottom. And these roles were established, and they're still with the genre. It's that's just how it is. Okay, so the next recommendation I'm going to give is for Tokyo Babylon by Clamp. As I mentioned, Clamp is a pretty popular group. A lot of their work has BL undertones. And this work is not strictly a BL manga, but it's heavily implied. There is a kind of will they, won't they um, queer relationship. And it's kind of complex, which again, I really like. The series follows Subaru Sumeragi. He is the head of the Sumeragi clan, and his sister Hokuto as they work to protect Tokyo from a myriad of supernatural perils. Their friend Sakurazuka Seishiro is a 25-year-old veterinarian friend of the twins who professes his love for Subaru. Hokuto thinks that they should become a couple, as she believes Seishiro is the mysterious Sakura Zukamori, an assassin on Miyagi set to protect Japan from the shadows. So, content warnings for this: violence, an age gap relationship. There is high angst, drama, murder. It's very good. This is one of the first manga by the supergroup Clamp, and it was actually based on a doujinshi short that they had done. And the relationship between Subaru and Seishiro is a mainstay in the Clamp universe and features in multiple works. It's in X 1999. They come up in Tsubasa. They come up in other shorts. And it's one of the most explicit queer relationships in their oeuvre. Somebody asked, when will Watanuki get with Domeki? They're another couple in Triple X Holic. In my heart, they're together. Okay, so now I kind of mentioned that the 90s is when the tropes really started to become ingrained in the genre. So we're going to go over kind of the biggest ones that show up continually in BL manga. So these tropes began in 70s manga and can be seen in manga to this day, though they were at their height in the 90s to the mid 2000s. The seme-uke trope is probably the most ubiquitous. It comes from the martial arts term to attack and to receive. Seme have smaller eyes, they're more aggressive, and the uke often have feminine characteristics. The uke characters often are more androgynous, which makes it easier for female readers to identify with. And it's important to note that BL is not written to reflect queer identities or couples. It's made that's kind of like an incidental part of the genre. And as we've kind of moved forward in the genre and things have developed, queer representation has become more important and more of a focus. But early on in the genre, that was like not what artists were doing. They just wanted to make fun stories. In BL dramas and shipping, this is exemplified by the order of names. So the first name is the seme and the second name is the uke. Another trope, non-consensual intimacy or touching. Rape is not often treated as an assault, but as uncontrollable urges and passion. This can be seen in manga like Fake, where the main character D is pursuing Ryo by forcing him and pushing boundaries. Ryo's protests are consistently ignored, but it is played for laughs. And in the story, it is not seen as problematic. And there's also the kind of idea that the character you're wearing down the character until they give in. This is not just in BL, this is also a trope in shoujo manga at the time, and can be seen in popular series like Hana Yori Dango, or Boys, also known as Boys Over Flowers, which has been adapted into dramas all over the world, probably most famously internationally, the Korean version. Another trope is the protagonists are often androgynous. Again, it's so partially so that female readers can more easily identify the with the character without having to literally see themselves. And another fun one that definitely developed in the 2000s were the yaoi hands. Like, you've all seen the hands that are as big as a character's face. It's very silly. So people often ask why women? Like, why is this the audience? Why are women making it? Like, why? So BL manga is traditionally by women and for women, but it is enjoyed by a wide audience, not just women. Um, Men like it, non-binary people like it. Lots of different people enjoy these stories, and some people like it because it focuses on the affection and friendship between men, which in our society here and I think in Japanese society is not as common. Gay manga for men has its own genre called bada, and there's many conflicting theories and scholarship on why women enjoy the genre. A couple of reasons that came up in research that I've seen in kind of academic papers about the study of BL is that it BL is free from the oppression of gender difference. So when women are reading BL manga, they don't have to consider gender dynamics that they experience in their own lives in the work that they're reading. So they can kind of enjoy a relationship between two characters without having to consider like what would happen in real life if I was in this situation. And it allows women to consume media where they are free from being viewed as an object. There is no male gaze in BL manga. And in BL manga, women are always the side characters, which, you know, there's like a little representation, but it's really mostly about the men. All right. So, fandom and the genre today. The BL genre had originated in manga, but has expanded into a number of mediums and marketplaces. And manga today has started to leave behind the problematic genre tropes. Characters often self identify as queer, and narratives feature coming out stories. Gay marriage is not legal in Japan yet, but it is becoming more widely accepted. And stories explore contemporary gay culture and attitudes in Japan. So, more men are also starting to write BL manga. There are non binary artists that are writing BL manga. So the genre is opening up so it's not just really by women for women anymore. And the genre is also influencing other anime and manga that are being created. So two really good examples are Yuri on Ice and Kiss Him Not Me. I think Yuri on Ice is probably the most well-known example. And if you're watching it, you can definitely see the influence of BL in every aspect of the show. So I think it's really important and kind of fun to talk about the expansion of BL manga internationally when talking about BL manga because all of these things developed, from the 70s to the like 90s and 2000s. And as the genre developed and it gained traction internationally, it began to get more and more popular and has kind of come out as being like not just a niche thing that people enjoy in silence, but is like really something that people enjoy loudly. So BL has exploded internationally in a variety of formats, and these all of these media take the genre that originated um, in manga and played around with it, adapted it for different media, and have done all sorts of things. Um, So the different formats that have come out are Thai BL and Korean BL dramas. Thai BL is probably the biggest that's come out. um, Danmei in China, and manhwa. So some notable examples of each of these. For manhwa and webtoons, there's Semantic Error, BJ Alex, Killing Stalking, um, Thai BL, which are TV shows, are in turn based off of original BL novels, which were inspired by BL manga. Some really popular series include Together, um, Tale of a Thousand Stars, which is a personal favorite. But there are hundreds at this point. And in 2020, there were only a handful of Thai BL, but the drama Together sparked popularity worldwide during COVID. And while everybody was home, there was nothing to do. And this show that was being released for free on YouTube with subtitles got over 100 million views internationally, with people from all over the world uh, consuming this content. So now in 2023, there are hundreds of BL dramas being produced in Thailand. We've kind of gone the total opposite end where now there's an oversaturation in the market. Each country has their own take on the genre, though, um, and incorporates different cultural norms into their genre storytelling. So a couple more examples. In China, Danmei come out of China. This includes The Untamed and Scum Villain Self Saving System. The Untamed is extremely popular in not just internationally, but in China. It is one of the most popular shows of all time. Um, and even though it is a queer relationship because of censorship, it is never officially acknowledged. Um, and a thing I actually learned last night was the term danmei actually is a re-borrowed use of tanbi from Japan. So it's also interesting how the different countries kind of share the language and like use it in different ways. And BL novels are traditionally published in many Asian and Southeast Asian countries. So here, we don't have a lot of like this type of story. But in Asian and Southeast Asian countries, BL stories, like traditionally published, are very popular, and you can go to stores in Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and there's whole sections of original works that you can buy that people have written. And people also write these and publish them online. And BL has become one of Thailand's major cultural exports now. And the actors in the industry have actually used their cultural capital to pressure the government to legalize same sex marriage. And this is a subject that many dramas address head on now. So it's also interesting to see how, as the genre has developed, people are kind of trying to take it and use it to enact cultural change. So I'm going to end by giving a couple more recommendations for series that I really like that I think are really good. So my first recommendation is Our Dream at Dusk by Yui Kanatani. And the story follows Tasuka Kaname, a gay teenager who meets other LGBTQ people at a discussion lounge after being involuntarily outed. Content warnings for this story. There's homophobia, discussions of suicide. Um, but what I really like about this series, it's pretty short, it's only 4 volumes, is that it exemplifies what the future of BL manga can look like and features a diverse queer cast. There are trans characters, there's X-gender characters, which is what Japan calls non-binary people as X-gender. X-gender characters, there is a lesbian couple that wants to get married, and there's a whole storyline about like lesbian marriage and gay marriage in Japan. It's a really good series, and it's kind of grounded in this high schooler and this crush she has on a classmate. Another series that I love, this is probably my favorite BL series currently, is What Did You Eat Yesterday by Fumi Yoshinaga. Um, it's a slice of life series that focuses on the relationship between Shirokake and Yabuki, a middle aged gay couple living in Tokyo, Japan. Uh, the story is about them making dinner together every night. And each chapter features a menu, and the characters self identify as queer. And the story deals with the social and cultural expectations in gay culture in Japan. So this story is about older characters. They are in a long-term committed relationship. They have lived together for a long time, and the series kind of tracks them over. At this point, it's like a 15-year span. We're up to volume 19 currently. The manga is still being published. It's was started in 2009, still going strong. I don't think she's going to stop anytime soon. And it's a Kodansha Manga Award winner, which is kind of it's a top prize. It's probably comparable to the Pulitzer Prize, or like the Man Booker for like traditional literary works here, or comparable to like an Eisner for comics. And the artist Fumi Yoshinaga has created doujinshi of her characters featuring explicit side stories that don't fit with the overall vibe of the story. And one last interesting thing about this work that I learned recently is that in Japan, it's actually published in a seinen magazine. And if you recall from earlier, seinen magazines are traditionally targeted at boys and men ages 14 to 40. And when she pitched the series to them, the magazine was like, great, this sounds awesome. And an interviewer was asking her, like, didn't you like, did they know what your story was about? Like, did they know that it was a story about like two gay men? And in the interview, Yoshinaga was like, they definitely knew what the story was. Um, they they knew what they were getting. They've never given any pushback. And she was talking about how she sees her creation of this work as kind of like a form of like education and activism. She didn't use the word activism, but I think that's kind of the energy behind it because she wanted to show men that there was a way that you could be like a sensitive and caring partner. And she's giving them like a little guide. And then two last recommendations are given by Natsuki Kizu. This series follows a group of four students in an amateur rock band and the dual romantic relationships that form among them between vocalist Mafuyu and electric guitarist Ritsuka, and between bassist Haruki and drummer Akihiko. The characters self identify as gay, and as far as content warnings go, the series does deal with issues of suicide and grief. The suicide is not on screen; it's has happened before the story has begun, but it is like the aftermath is explored in the work. And this series is also really popular. It has an anime adaptation, it has a drama adaptation, and it has a movie adaptation. And then the last recommendation is for Dokyusei by Asumiku Nakamura. It's about two classmates with separate interests who meet and fall in love when one of them has to tutor the other. It's notable for portraying characters that self identify as gay. Content warnings, there is a questionable relationship between a student and a teacher. This is not the main focus of the story. You can totally like just skip those chapters, which is what I do because I don't care about that. But it's really sweet, and there's a really great OVA that was made for it. So yeah, that's kind of the history background 101 of BL. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and I can answer them. And I'll give just like a moment for you to do that if you have anything. But otherwise, thank you. Yeah, so while we're waiting for questions, we have some upcoming streams coming up. So on June 13th, we're going to be doing fun cookie decorating. And then on June 15th, there's a Let's Play where we'll be playing Coffee Talk. I do not know what that is, but I do like a video game with coffee in the name. So you guys should tune in if either of those sound interesting. Somebody asked for my fave Thai BL. My favorite Thai BL is Not Me, because it's all about political activism, being gay, doing domestic terrorism to bring down the government. And it's very timely because there's a really great like pride event during the show. So you should check it out. It's on YouTube. It's very good. Um, Another question: are there any BL books that I have or I'm currently reading? I'm not reading any manga at the moment. That's new. I'm reading Killing Stalking, which is an extremely problematic dead dove do not eat manhwa. But I really like it. I'm also reading What Did You Eat Yesterday? Those are the two series that are like being published that I'm reading. But I'm also reading the Untamed novels, Modazushi, for the first time. And I'm partway through book one. I'm going very slowly. Cool. Awesome. So I don't think there's any more questions. So thank you all for coming. Uh, it was great to talk about my favorite genre. And yeah, tune in the future for other fun, great Geek Girl Con streams. Bye bye.